Hello everybody and welcome back to another Sunday video. Each week I go through the markets and I talk about setups that I'm currently looking at, or in this case, trades that I'm actually in myself right now. So welcome back to the channel. If you're new, make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and let's talk a little bit about markets. Now I did want to start with the dollar here this week, and more specifically I wanted to pull up my position because I feel like honestly if I was watching this sort of content, which weirdly enough, I do watch my own content for just kind of, feedback purposes. But I'd like to see kind of trades that people are actually in and why they're taking them. So I want to jump into this dollar yen trade, give you guys an update for those of you who have been keeping tabs. I bought back here last week, right at the beginning of the week, and we had such an excellent week for the dollar yen. I now have my stop loss trailed at this point by a pretty good margin. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my thoughts on the dollar and more specifically the dollar yen. So the dollar overall, I am bullish on. So my thought process with that, why I'm bullish on the dollar, well, risk off sentiment is still kind of dominating the markets. So I actually bought this thing on a pullback thinking, okay, as long as the Ukraine and Russia situation is still putting pressure on global markets, I do actually want to be a buyer of the dollar and specifically a seller of the yen because Japan's proximity to Russia, that situation, and the dollar just, in my opinion, is the more attractive of the safe havens at this time. Okay, so I've got my stop loss locked. I put my stop loss just below this low here. Basically, after we put that low in, I just decided, you know what? I'm going to continue to hold this. I've been trailing this stop loss for, like I said, about a week now since I took the initial buy last week. My targets 1, 2, and 3 all got hit. So now it's just a matter of, okay, those targets got hit. I don't take profits at those points. What I do is I just, that's where I start aggressively trailing stops. So once we hit, target 1, that was break even. Once we hit target 2, I went ahead and locked in some profit. Target 3, started locking in more. And now we've been able to lock in a serious gain on this account once this thing decides to pull back. And we don't know when it will. It might continue higher. So just a little bit of an example here this week of a trade gone right. Last week was not a great week for me. So this week, or this past week here, was really nice to see a nice gainer. By the way, we are doing 20% off right now. And with this trade, I figured it was a good example of showing kind of how, a good trade and a good winner can go inside of our private Discord. If you're not already in the Discord, I share every trade that I take with full breakdowns and reasoning. So you can see the trade, why I'm taking it, the pullback level that I took it at, the fundamentals, the technicals, the entire breakdown of the trade, and updates throughout the trade while I take it. So if you guys would like access to this, you get access to my trades, Frank's trades, Patrick's, Annie's, Ivan's. We also have a chat room available. We have trading chat room, a general chat room. We trade stocks, crypto, Forex. We trade pretty much all of it. And we also have coaching webinars. We have an educational portal where you can read up on our strategies, etc., and much, much more. If you're looking to join the Discord and you haven't already, now's your chance to do so for 20% off. Use the code down below in the description for that subscriber discount. And, I hope to see some of you guys in there. We've had some really, really crazy weeks the last couple months now. Okay, so let's take a look at the dollar from a macro scale for a second, then we'll come back to some individual pairs. I do think that the dollar is probably headed back to the highs, hence why I held on to my dollar yen long position. I'm not trying to drop it before it continues higher. Like my goal here is to stay long on this dollar until the market tells me not to be anymore, right? We held support beautifully last week, right? We came down to that level. This is around when I got that dollar yen position, and we just rallied and rallied and rallied. So from here, I do think that path of least resistance looks like we're probably headed back to the highs. The dollar continues to be the strength haven on the block. And so for me, the next question is, can we get the breakout? And if you watch my channel for a while, you're going to start hearing some repetitive stuff. There's going to be times where you just hear me saying the same thing over and over. And hey, you know what? That's what trading is. If you don't like that sort of concept, then you're probably in the wrong industry, because trading really gets very repetitive, and that's okay, right? We want to be doing things over and over that are working for us. Right now, that dollar yen trade is relying on this idea here. Can we get the breakout on the dollar? Can we make that move higher this week? And can we close above this 99.30? My personal opinion, I think we are headed to the round number play, which if we line this up, where's that at? $100 on the button. I think that is probably a reasonable target should we see continued bullishness this week or maybe in the next few weeks to see the dollar head up to 100. Okay, 100 is a big psychological level, and it was kind of peculiar that the price decided to pull back shy of 100. We hit 99.3 and then pulled back perhaps due to some news or something like that. But I do think that the next wave higher, should we see one on the dollar, is probably headed to 100. Now remember, as traders, we are not guaranteeing, we are not absolutely certain about anything in the markets. We are reacting to what the markets are telling us. So right now, this is what I think is most likely going to happen. But it is possible, and not something I'm betting on, but perhaps we see a double top and we see a breakout the other way, in which case next week we'll be talking about this a little bit differently. But for the time being, price looks strong, and I'm not looking to fight the trend. I'm looking to go with it. I'm looking to buy the dollar against other currencies and look for breakouts, pullbacks, continuations. And if that changes, we'll change our tone. But for the time being, going with the flow, in my opinion, in my experience in markets, it's much easier to go with the flow than to fight it. We'll talk about things like gold in just a little while, which will be a great example of this, as well as oil, perhaps, if we get to that. There's plenty of markets that have been showcasing the power of just trend following right now. So here's euro dollar, a pair that I do want to be short on. We've discussed this one a couple different times. You guys may have known that I missed my opportunity here. Well, I didn't miss it, but the market just didn't set up for it. And it happens. It happens to the best of us. But check this out. I liked this 50% level, and look how beautifully it lined up with that zone that we've got marked right here, right? We've got this area on the chart where essentially we found support. And if you think about what happened here, right? You had buyers here, you had buyers here, and they're thinking, okay, this has got to be finding a bottom here. We've got the double bottom, and then bam, right? We just broke through it and fell through the floor. So on a retest of that zone, as this thing was rising, I basically was like, okay, I want to sell it right here. But I didn't quite get it. And as you can imagine, that can be a little bit frustrating. So this was a trade setup that was on my watch list, came up just shy. It missed it by 25 pips. You guys are going to be amazed. I know that number almost exactly. Check this out. 25 pips, right? Well, is that right? Well, it's about 26, 27. We missed it by 25, give or take pips, before I was able to get into my entry, which is definitely a painful thing because look how fast it dramatically dropped from there. Now, where's the euro dollar headed next? Well, in my personal opinion, I think that it's very safe to say we are probably, most likely, going to want to retest those lows, 1.084. Is that going to happen this week? We'll see. It looks like it's in momentum. It looks like it has enough conviction to perhaps get there this week. Now, the question from there, again, repeating ourselves, similar to the dollar, we have a market trending. The question is, can we take out the extremes and continue the process? We've got a lower high. Now, can we get a lower low? A lower low looks like this, a break underneath this structure point. This is our supportive level that we've got to break if we're going to continue this downward trend. Now, I personally think fundamentally and technically that the euro dollar has the chance to do it this week. With the situation with Ukraine and Russia, if that changes, we may have to readjust what we're saying here. But for now, it does look like we've got a lot of strength to the downside. We've got things like this happening. We've got breakouts, right? And, the RSI, very weak right now, showing, lower highs as well. That's always an important thing, right? Sometimes people will look at RSI divergence as well. But for me right now, this breakout looks pretty key. And now the question is, if you're looking at this intraday, let's look at this for a 1 hour chart for a second. Let's say that you notice that this thing broke out right here. And now you're saying, okay, well, I like the idea of selling, but I want to get an entry that makes sense, right? I don't want to chase this thing, but I'd like to be in on the move if it sets up. I kind of like this. This is a bit of a wide stop if you're an intraday trader. I actually do take a lot of my trades on the 1 hour chart. And personally, when I trade the euro dollar, I usually look for something like 50, 60, 70 pips, somewhere in that range. That's like my stop loss size. It's going to be different person to person, but that's kind of how I approach it. So, I would be looking at this if I was intraday, if I'm looking for a shorter term attempt, which honestly is not out of the question here now that I've missed my zone of entry, a proper potential re-entry, right? Even though I missed the idea here, right? I'm still sell biased fundamentally, which guides my trading by about 60, 70%. I'm mostly a fundamental trader. I trade in the direction of the fundamental analysis that I do, and I take my entries off of technical analysis with my stops, etc., using the charts, using price action. So the tricky part here is about the stop, right? So let's say that price does rally here short term in the euro dollar, and you say, okay, I want to be a seller, right? And I'm just speaking from my personal take, my personal opinion. We've got this kind of zone where we did bottom out before selling off into the close last week. This is a 1 hour chart. So this is what happened on Friday. We saw a sell off on Friday on the euro dollar. If we do retrace, if we find the bulls come in there, I do think that there's opportunities here on euro dollar for possible sells. And in fact, let's get a shorter term fib on here just for the sake of it. If you're being a bit more conservative here with this, perhaps the entry is a bit higher up here at the 38.2% retracement. In fact, I think you probably, if we tighten this up just a little bit, you probably get a better risk to reward once you start looking at the 38.2. And then we don't have such a problem with putting a stop somewhere like just above the highs here. Because at this point, right, if price comes up here, I want to see this thing drop hard, or I don't want to be in it anymore. Right? You guys know, if you, like I showed you earlier in the screen, the UJ trade that I'm in, I got into that trade and it ran in my favor really, really quick. Those are the trades I want to be in. If I see a trade go sour real quick, I'm just out of there. There's no problem. I have no issue. I have no, loyalty to the trade setup, and I'm not going to just chase a trade or, hold it with no stop and beg the market to go in my favor. That's just not what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is that if the market comes up to a level that I like, and I do like this idea on euro dollar, we've got resistance here. We've got a resistance level in the form of a 38.2% retracement, and we've got a fundamental trend that I can get behind. I like the idea of a potential return back to the lows, and that gives us, just by this nature, with a 60 pip stop, that's about a 2.8 to 1. Let's give it, we're somewhere around there. That's pretty good to me. I like the idea there. With a potential return back to this low being like target 1, I think that this is a really reasonable setup. I like this idea a lot. So target 1 could be this, and we're assuming something here, right? We are assuming that the market starts to rally, starts to pull back here in the early portions of the week to set this trade up. Assuming that happens, we could potentially target this swing low and then a longer term swing low as target number 2. I like it a lot. I think that this is a reasonable trade setup. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section if you like the euro dollar idea or if you disagree with it. Maybe you have something, maybe you say, wait for 61.8, just let me know. That's kind of the point of the comment section, is just to share ideas and to go through charts again. But just one more time before I forget to say it, dollar yen, right? When I made that point about I look for trades to go in my favor quickly or get out of them, my stop loss here was relatively tight. In fact, let's go look at what the trade initially was. I forget exactly the pip count, but if I go back to the beginning of this trade, I risked 40 pips. I shouted that out to members. I said, I'm just risking 40 pips here. So it's not like I'm risking a crazy distance, even though my position size, 115,000 units, that's 1.15 lots. Even though that's pretty good, my stop loss here, guys, was 40 pips. So it was nothing big, right? I was basically saying, if this takes out the low, I'm out of there. So that was my initial stop. So as you can see, from there, it's dramatically gone well. I think it's a 5 to 1 now. Let me see. So 40. We're currently locked in at 180. So let's say 190 divided by 40, whatever that is, right? So 4 would be 160. So let's say 5 to 1 roughly. So that's pretty good spot to be in. And we're floating like a 6R. So that's kind of what I'm looking at when I look at these trades. When we talk about setups together here, I am looking for opportunities that can set me up for that. And if I take those trades, again, like I said, all of them go inside of the Discord. And don't miss out on that 20% off sale. We're doing that 20% off. I keep saying it because, again, we're looking for more people to join who are serious about this stuff and want to be a part of kind of our objective, which is bringing together realistic traders. There's a whole lot of nonsense out there. If you're looking for a real community, that is really genuinely what you're going to get inside of our chat. So come join us. Here's British pound against the US dollar, GBPUSD. This one, kind of an interesting pair. It's been sold off like dramatically. This thing is really low on the RSI. If you look at this thing on a daily chart, check this out. We've got, we've been consistently sitting underneath the 30. I use an RSI 4, which I know is a bit, unusual for a lot of people, but I use the short-term RSI just to get a gauge of, what price action looks like just from a macro scale. So I know that if this area, the pound was really, really strong for a long time, right? If I see, I'm just looking at the RSI, if I see over here that this was showing a lot of strength, right? There you go. You had a lot of green coming into the screen, right? And then it followed through. So it is something that I personally look at. A lot of times RSI people look at it, this is just like a oh, it's oversold, it's got a bounce. I personally just look at it as like a, RSI divergence tool. I also look at it as a measure of strength. And on the shorter time frames, I use it for pullbacks. So for example, if I'm looking at the 1 hour chart and I'm in a sell bias, right? I have a sell bias on this pair. If this thing rallies and gets this thing to poke up, it's just an extra confluence saying, hey, this thing looks like it may be a bit extreme. Look for potential sells. So that's kind of just how I look at it. But anyways, here's the pound dollar. So the pound dollar, you guys, this thing just had so much resilience last week. Like, it had so much sell strength. Every single rally just got met with just a punch in the face, it seemed like. Like, look at this. So little bitty rallies sold into, rally sold into, rally sold into, right? So right now the pattern seems to be that sellers are in control of this market. We have lower highs coming in. We have sellers dominating every time price rallies. So I would be cautious again for that pattern to continue this week, as the dollar does seem to be very, very strong right now. So when we look at the 1 hour chart, and this is a little bit lower time frame than perhaps we usually do, but I wanted to talk about this because, a lot of people who are looking at this, they're saying, when is the bottom going to happen? And I just think that that's a question that's really dangerous. In fact, let me show you guys something. If I head over to the website and I show you guys something, if we go over to the retail sentiment section on the pound dollar, check this out. So pound dollar, 88% of retail traders are stuck in long positions. They're buying the pound against the dollar. They're holding on to this. By the way, this is our website, you guys. You can use it anytime you'd like. Head over to a1trading.com. That's my company. You guys can hit it up, use the tools anytime you'd like. But this has been brought to us by myfxbook.com. So this actually sets you up for success in the form of just looking at what retail traders on average are doing. So we have 88% of retail traders are buying this thing. Now, just a little heads up, if all the retail traders who on average lose a lot of money, if they're all buying and holding on to the pound as it continues to trade lower, I'm very cautiously staying away from going long myself until we see a good reason to. So for the time being, rallies back to 38.2 look like sells to me, right? And I'm not trying to predict, I'm not trying to call bottoms or anything like that. I'm literally just, right now this market looks very weak. If you like that, perhaps there's some setups. For me, I think that there's been some setups that we like more here on the screen so far. Perhaps you're a little bit more patient. You look for the 50%. That's not so bad. You're risking 40 pips here, something like that, with a continue to the low. And that's not terrible. But again, I think that this trend, despite me being bearish on this pair and going with the flow here, I still think that there are some better setups that haven't run so hard. Despite this thing being, in a trend to the downside, I still like to find setups that, look healthy. Like there's buyers and sellers in a market, just a net buyer or net buyer or seller overall, given, the idea of a trend. Excuse me. But on top of that, I think it's important to kind of think about, sorry about that, guys. I got a throat cough. The idea here being, when we look at a trend like this, if the market is just kind of extreme selling with little divots, there is a point where it starts to do something like this, where it just rallies extreme for a little bit, right? High volatility will stay around for a little while before it starts to calm down again. But I personally like trends that are kind of sustainable trends like this, right? It's kind of a weird concept. It's a little bit anecdotal, but I just don't love trends that are like dripping like a waterfall, right? I like to look for, the gradual trends that make a little bit more sense. But I mean, this still looks like a great trend, don't get me wrong. But personally, if I was to really look to trade this as a swing trader, I would like to see, maybe a retest of structure here, maybe a retest of structure here. And these are, further distances away. You're talking about 150, 272 pips. Those are big moves, right? But this is a 4-hour chart. That's a little bit more where I'd be looking for some confluence, because I think that, you're selling down here. Grand scheme of things, this thing may find some bottom here, and we may see that short-term rally on up to 1.32, where at that point I think you get a much more attractive sell, in my personal opinion. So that's kind of what I see on the pound dollar. Let's take a look at gold together. Here is the XAUUSD chart. And gold, a little bit resilient last week. We did end up holding this zone here of support right around 1970, give or take. We saw price pull back there and aggressively towards the end of the week found some buyers in that zone. Personal opinion is gold is still bullish until further notice. You've got short-term targets levels like 2000, right? Nice round number there. And of course, you know, you've got this point here and the previous high at 2070. So, you know, the question is, as we pull back, and that is what we're in right now. We are still technically in a pullback, at least in my view, right? Once we see a true reversal, you'll know, right? There'll be something like this. You'll see huge breakouts. Structure won't be holding. It'll be pretty obvious that the trend has changed. But right now, it does seem like the bulls are still holding. We still have higher lows. We still have support all over this chart. And it does seem like pullback opportunities are still in order. So when I look at this, right, I'm looking for buys only, both from a technical analysis perspective, but also a fundamental one. The world is a really unnerving place right now. We see a lot of fear coming into this market. We see a lot of, you know, for good reason. We have a war going on in Eastern Europe. We have monetary policy around the world trying to tighten and fight inflation, which is running rampant in many places. So you have a very fearful world. And with that said, gold is rising off of that. People are buying gold. They're holding gold in this time of uncertainty and fear. And so for me as a trader, you know, regardless of my speculation and my opinion as to what's going to happen in the overall world, my opinion as a trader is just ride what is in front of you, go with the flow, change directions when you need to. But for the time being, that tells me that bullish breakouts on gold are things that I'm looking for. So for example, you know, let's say you get a breakout, you get a pullback. You're looking to trade these moves. You're trying to go with it. And again, this is just my personal style of trading. I'm doing this for like 6 years, and this just seems to work for me, right? In fact, you know, a lot of times people won't show you any sort of track record. I try and keep it real. I do show my track record. I'm not, you know, doubling and flipping accounts every month. I'm not, you know, the biggest shot on the block or anything like that. But I have done a strategy for a long time that has worked well for me. It is trend following. It goes with the flow, and it has done exceptionally well ever since 2020. It's actually been my best couple trading years due to the incredible volatility in the markets. Volatility is excellent for short-term traders if you know how to use it. It's horrible for traders if you don't know how to use it and you get stuck. But we've been able to catch some incredible big trades. We've caught some incredible trends, some major moves. Some recently on gold have been really good for us, have been good for the for my personal accounts and for, you know, growth. The idea being we love to profit off of volatility. When markets are trending like crazy, that's excellent opportunity for my style of trading. So if you're not already in our group and you would like to learn the way that I trade, if you'd like to see the trades that I'm taking and get the breakdowns as they're coming out, get a notification to your phone, join the chat, hang out with us, learn from us, work with us, right? We have several traders who are awesome inside of the group contributing to what we do at A1 Trading. So if you're not already in there, I'm telling you, use that code. Today's your chance, 20% off. Join in, get in on the action, and let's do this for real. No nonsense, no demo profits, no fake nonsense. Real trading, real traders, come hang out with us. Thanks very much for watching, you guys. Make sure to hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.